Welcome to Books and Things with Tom. And I'm Tom. Anyway, I'd like to wish everybody a very happy holiday, or as I say, Merry Christmas. And I hope you're going to be in tune with us, because in 2 weeks, Santa Claus is going to be here. And who doesn't want to talk to Santa Claus? You know, Santa Claus, he's been here 3 years now. This will be our 4th year. And so Santa Claus is coming in on the 22nd, I believe it is. So tune in for that. And today we have Beth Caruso. Beth, somehow, we'll find out shortly how she got involved with witches. And very interesting story that the first witch that was hung here in Connecticut. One of Windsor, and she wrote a book about it, so we're going to talk about the book. Beth grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, spent her childhood writing puppet shows and witches' cookbooks. So you've been around the witches a long time.
Yeah, I've always been interested in witches. Always.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad you came down. Beth lives in Windsor, and so she drove all the way down here this afternoon just to be with me, and I appreciate that. So you've had quite an interesting education. You studied French literature and Hispanic studies, receiving a Bachelor of Arts at the University of Cincinnati.
Yes.
Has that helped you write the book?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I got that first degree, but in some ways, I'm sure it helped.
And you said that, you say here that you got a master's degree in nursing and public health, and you just quit.
I stopped about a year and a half ago, basically last August of 2015.
Wow.
I just wanted to focus on the book and promoting the book, and I had some family things going on. I wanted to be with them.
Good.
And it's kept me busy, I tell you.
Changing careers is good.
It's always fun.
Yeah.
I've met so many interesting people.
Now, how in the world did you get into this witch program?
Well, strange story. I moved to Windsor, Connecticut because my husband got a job at Central. He's a professor there. So we moved from Cincinnati, Ohio, and one of my neighbors told me one day, "Did you realize that the very first woman hanged for witchcraft was from our town?" I said, "No way. You gotta be kidding me."
I just said Salem.
Yeah, I said, I thought, I knew about Salem and all the witch trials there, but I didn't know there were any hangings in Connecticut. But in actuality, there were 11 hangings in Connecticut.
Really?
Yes, 34 accusations. Many people had to flee. There would have been more hangings if they hadn't fled. So Alice was the very first one, not only in Connecticut, but in all of the colonies.
Wow.
So I became
And you had
obsessed.
trouble trying to find her name, too.
Well, I didn't have as much of a problem finding her name, but I had a problem finding out anything about her. The story is entitled One of Windsor, and many people did not know her name until the late 1800s. We knew that there was a witchcraft hanging victim that died in 1647, only because John Winthrop, who was the governor of Massachusetts at the time, wrote in his journal, "One of Windsor, arraigned and executed for a witch in Hartford." But nobody knew her name, nobody, until this diary shows up. It's called the Matthew Grant Diary, which used to be the old Windsor church record. And a historian, James Hammond Trumbull, discovered on the inside cover of that diary, Alice Young was hanged May the 26th, 1647. That was the late 1800s. So that was the first time ever that her name was revealed.
Wow.
And he didn't even really tell other people, only a few historians. But the public didn't know. Not until his daughter, Annie Elliott Trumbull, published a piece in the Hartford Courant in 1912 did the public find out about her.
Really?
Yeah, so that's, well over 300 years. And then 1912 to the 2000s,
Yeah.
nobody knew anything.
And it was called One of Windsor.
So, yeah, she was one blank of Windsor
Ah.
for
I-
hundreds of years.
I just find that flabbergasting.
It is, and I felt like it was a cover-up. So I became absolutely obsessed with finding out the story behind Alice Young.
Yeah.
There's very little information that's about her. Those were the only two direct sources of information about her. Really, but in Windsor, there was one man named John Young who lived in Windsor, moved there in 1641. There were no other Youngs, so historians assume that that was her husband. And there are very old maps from that time. So basically what I did was looked at where she lived, which was a street called Backer Row in Windsor, and I put together the street, all the neighbors that lived on that street in the year that she was hanged. And lo and behold, this pattern evolved and this story evolved, which was absolutely fascinating, and I had to write about it.
Oh my God! It's a novel. I thought it was going to be just pure history, but you've taken history and woven in it, and it's really very interesting book. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten read through the whole thing, but I have touched on a couple of spots. And I think we should point out that she really wasn't a witch.
No, she was probably a Christian woman, and she probably fit the pattern of many people who were accused of witchcraft.
Yeah.
I believe that she was a healer from my research. I can't be absolutely certain because, again, the research was piecing together a lot of different things that really fell into place like a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
But many healers were accused. There were women that were accused who were widows and people wanted their property. I don't think that applied in this situation. However, there were other ones who were accused because they had been involved in a previous accusation, or they might have been a family member or good friend of somebody who was accused. A whole variety of reasons.
It's amazing because people who are mediums, they would be considered witches, and there's a lot of seers and people that can tell fortunes, so to speak, and these people would have been witches. They'd have been hung.
They would have been looked at suspiciously because the ministers, the Puritan ministers at the time, did not condone that. Most of the time, they didn't condone folk magic, which a lot of people still practiced. But, in the case of Alice Young, the first doctor who lived in the colonies, Bray Rossiter, also lived in Windsor, so there might have been that male-female competition. And interestingly enough, Bray Rossiter, he performed the first autopsy in the American colonies, and it was during the Hartford witch panic. There was a young girl that died, and people suspected it was because of witchcraft. So his job was to do an autopsy to determine if she had indeed died from witchcraft. And he said yes, she had. So that was a really interesting connection. No. I don't think so. But the other interesting thing about her, which I think led to her accusation too, well, there were two things. There was a flu epidemic that year.
Oh, that's right.
Huge flu epidemic. The death rate the year before had been 6 people. Now, mind you, these are very small towns.
Yeah.
And then the year of the hanging, it went up to 27. So we have that. Also, I think she was part of this larger family called the Tinker family. And there's some interesting people in that family. The brother in that family, John Tinker, he was actually an assistant to John Winthrop in Massachusetts, and then later became the assistant to John Winthrop Jr. in Connecticut.
Huh.
Now, strangely enough, John Winthrop Jr. was the one who stopped the witch trials in Connecticut.
I wonder if they were related to the Grant Tinker that just died the other day.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, he lived in New London for a long time, so probably some of his descendants are going to be watching your show.
Well, Grant was married to one of the big stars. I can't remember who she was. He was a big name. I don't think he was from here.
Interesting.
I did read something about John Mason.
Yes,
You have the statue up there,
we do.
Yes.
We have the statue of John Mason.
all the way from Mystic,
Yes, yes.
because the Indians didn't like it.
No, no. The Pequots do not like it. I don't blame them for not liking it.
I don't either.
Windsor took it because he was part of Windsor's history.
Okay.
He lived in Windsor. Interestingly enough, he led the Pequot War massacre on May the 26th, 1637. Fast forward 10 years, he was the treasurer on the Connecticut General Court. And a lot of times, the treasurer would act as a prosecutor. So he could have, I can't say for absolute sure, but he could have been a prosecutor for the trial of Alice Young. And she was hanged exactly 10 years to the day of the Pequot massacre. Now, mind you, Mason would have thought of the Pequots and all the Native Americans as basically devil worshippers. So if that was the day that the massacre happened, and he, of course, he thought it was a great victory for Christianity and the English. So if he was on that court, wouldn't it make sense that 10 years to the day he would want to be giving the devil a message?
Yeah.
So then there she hangs.
Isn't that something?
It's crazy. No, the history is just crazy.
Absolutely. I miss John.
Fascinating stuff.
As a kid driving around, I always drove around John Mason, and all of a sudden he's gone.
Well, I'll send you pictures.
That is amazing. And I love the way you put the story together. It's just, you managed to weave in a lot of names that we know, and a lot of historical people. And I think it's a great book. If you get a chance, stop at your local bookstore or Amazon.
Amazon, Windsor Historical Society. If you go to my website, www.oneofwindsor.com, I list a bunch of places that you can actually buy it.
Oh, good. That's the website. And if you can't get one of them, contact me and I'll get a hold of a copy for you. It's One of Windsor. Very interesting reading, and winter's coming. You're going to need something. It's going to take a lot of time to read. It's how many pages?
358.
Not as big as a Clancy book, but close.
Very interesting, though.
And it's good reading because it does move right along. And that's what I like about it. It's not some books are really slow reading, and then you got to back up and say, what? But you do trace everything out. Very excellent book if you want to know about witches and especially Connecticut. A lot of Connecticut history in here. Very well read, written. So how long did it take you to write the book?
Well, I started doing research in 2013, the spring of 2013, and then I started writing in the fall of 2014.
Wow.
It took me about 6 months to write, and then 6 more months to tweak it and edit it to where I really liked it.
Yeah. Are you self-published?
Yes, I'm self-published. The reason I'm self-published, and I didn't go to one agent, I didn't go to one publisher, because this story had been covered up for almost 370 years.
Wow.
And I did not, being a first-time author, I
Yeah.
absolutely did not want to take the chance
Yeah.
that it would be covered up again if I didn't sell X amount of copies in a certain period of time.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to do it that was authentic to the research that I found. Even though it's historical fiction, because I had to fill in some gaps, I still wanted it to be true to real life for the most part.
Yeah.
So that's why I did it that way.
That's great. Self-publishing is tough. The marketing is what's tougher.
Yeah.
And editing, apparently you did it yourself.
There was a gentleman who volunteers at Windsor Historical Society.
Ah.
Yes, and he helped me edit it.
Huh. And where'd you get the picture?
My friend Lori drew that picture for me.
Really?
Painted that picture for me. Yeah, this is really a
It's a pretty picture.
community effort.
Hmm.
And then another friend of mine helped me get it online, Suzanne Aspley. And people should look up Suzanne. She's an author in Minnesota. I knew her from Peace Corps, but she just came out with a book
Really?
called Granola, Minnesota.
Huh.
And fantastic author.
Now I'm trying to refresh my mind that I know I got an email. How'd you get in touch with me?
Through another author.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and then but when I heard the witch thing, I said I gotta have this one. Because that's basically what I do is to help people get out there. Christmas is in a couple of weeks. It's a great book. Keep somebody home one night reading the book, and
Thank you so much.
oh, it's my pleasure. It's just we work hard getting these books out.
Right. Well, it's a fascinating history that Connecticut has, and unfortunately, it's not talked about too much. Most people in Connecticut don't even know that there were witch trials here.
I didn't know.
Yeah, and they really were fascinating.
Yeah.
Absolutely fascinating.
Well, I think it's a tremendous thing that you've uncovered, and so many people are involved in it.
Yeah, the thing that struck me the most about doing the research was how it connected to so many other parts of history.
Yeah.
There was actually somebody who was connected to this story who later shows up in Salem, Massachusetts, and is a retired minister in Cotton Mather's church right as the witch trials start going in Salem. And of course,
Oh, wow.
Cotton Mather was a consulting minister. He was only in his 20s at the time, and we know in the historical record that this other man was mentioned by Cotton Mather several times, and so he could have been a secret influence. Also, there's a connection to the famous ghost ship out of New Haven, or the Phantom ship,
Yeah.
that was written about by Longfellow.
Huh.
So it's very fascinating. It
It
connects
is.
to all kinds of early Connecticut history.
That's amazing, because Connecticut's got such a lot of history.
It really
And
does.
It's just
It will bring it all together and make it come alive.
well, I guess you did a good job with that. I keep shutting this phone off. It keeps turning back on. Ghosts.
Could be.
So what's your next book?
Well, the next book is also in the 1600s. There's some continuing characters from this book. It takes place in New Amsterdam and Hartford during the Hartford Witch Panic. So we have a tavern in New Amsterdam, and by the way, I get to do some great research about brewing, which I'm very excited about.
Cool.
I have some friends at Fat Orange Cat Brewery up in East Hampton who are going to teach me the process of brewing for my research for the next book. So that's going to be interesting.
And more witches.
More witches, alchemy, secret codes, treason, treachery.
Oh, my.
It's all going to be in there.
And all happening here in Connecticut.
And New Amsterdam,
And New Amsterdam.
which later
Well,
became
actually,
New York.
This you start in London.
Yes.
And-
Well, Windsor,
No.
England. New Windsor,
New Windsor,
England.
England.
But it's just Windsor, England
Yeah.
now, which is where the Windsor Castle is.
Oh, okay, yeah. So it actually starts in Windsor, and they come over here by boat, naturally. We don't
Yeah.
have planes then. And
It's interesting because, she's called one of Windsor, and the town was called Windsor, with this small group of people that she was with. They were from Windsor, but the town was originally called Dorchester, and the majority of residents came from Dorchester. So then that made me wonder, was there some rivalry, some political rivalry
Yeah.
between the two groups?
Hmm.
That may have led to her hanging as well.
that's, you never know with these old people, because I've read some interesting historical books, and I guess they call it historical fiction. And I'm always intrigued by the amount of history that's in these books
Yeah.
that is kind of pieced together and to make into a great story.
Yeah?
And it's just, a friend of mine wrote a book about slavery. Slave Master's Wife, I think it's called. But he actually went down south to the plantations and learned the customs and everything down there to be able to write this book.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I
Yeah.
felt like I was, half of my waking hours, I felt like I was really in the 1600s. I mean, I was walking by tobacco fields where they used to grow tobacco.
Yeah.
I live right near where all of this went down.
Wow.
So
Do you know
I
where the
thought
actual
about-
place was for the hanging?
we think that it was probably in Hartford where Meeting House Square is, where the
okay.
old State House stands.
Yep. Yep.
Because there was a jail there right on Meeting House Square. That is probably the most likely location of the hanging.
Wow. And I remember the tobacco fields. They're not there anymore, are they?
Yes, we
Wow.
still have tobacco fields in Windsor. Not as many as there used to be.
Because I can remember going down some highway and people going, "Oh, that's tobacco, really?" Because I was a kid, so I didn't know, I
Yeah.
didn't know what it was.
I mean, tobacco growing started in Windsor in 1640, and they're still doing it today.
Wow, I didn't
Still.
know that. Mm-hmm. I thought all tobacco came from the south.
Well, I guess that seed from that time came from Virginia, but the natives up here were growing it.
Yeah,
They had their own uses for it.
that's interesting. I don't know where they were, but I remember driving through there. But that was back. I was probably a teenager, and I don't even think Route 2 was built.
Yeah.
So you had to go up Route 1 and all over the place. Anyway, I looking forward to finishing the book because I think it's now I'm hooked. I got to find out about where everybody is going, and we've got about 5 minutes left. Is there something you'd like to add?
I just want people to think about the lessons from those times about the scapegoating that went on.
Yeah. Yeah, we talk about slavery. We talk about. I mean, this country has had a lot of things that have been wrong, and you're not going to straighten them all out, and we're not going to be able to answer all the questions and everything. But this is the book, One of Windsor. Be sure to ask your local bookstore or try Amazon or wherever, and check the website. If you can't have any satisfaction out of that, call me. Or drop me a note, santostom@comcast.net, and I can make sure that I can get you an autographed copy.
Absolutely.
And
I will absolutely sign it for you.
there you go. good Christmas gift. And you can tell them you saw it here. And this is the place to be. Where we try to get people to learn about our local authors. Everybody knows all the big authors. I'm trying to get the local authors out there. We write good books, believe it or not.
Absolutely.
You know.
Great books.
They are. I mean, I've read some local authors that are just unbelievable. And some of their stories are so great. You know, well, wow. You know, why waste your time on the big guys? Go for the little ones. I have 2 books, and they're fun to write. And it's always great when somebody buys a book from you and say, "Will you sign it for me, please?"
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. Well, the main purpose of me writing this book was I wanted people to know about Alice Young.
Yeah,
I wanted her name to be cleared in a way.
yeah. Now, I just had a question, and wait a minute. What was your husband doing while you were doing all this writing?
What was he doing? Well, it was interesting because he is actually involved in this book through his genetics. When I was researching about the book, I discovered that he's related to the second witchcraft hanging victim from Windsor,
Oh, no.
Lydia Gilbert. Yes, it was either his great forever grandmother or great aunt. There's a little confusion there. But also somebody else, John Porter, who was on the Connecticut General Court, who probably had something to do with Alice's hanging.
Wow.
So that was just absolutely fascinating too.
Well, it's been fun. And watch my Christmas show on the 22nd. Santa Claus is coming to television, and we'll discuss his plans and Christmas Eve and Christmas, and maybe I can get some ideas from him with what he's giving away this year. This is the 4th year for Santa. Please watch. Christmas shopping is easy. Get some books to read. We've had a number of authors on the show. They all got books. Contact me. I can send you a list of the books that are available and where they're available and everything. All genres, children's books, and we got everything, mysteries. And in January, I'm going to be starting a new series, and I'll be putting up a flyer on heroin addiction. And keep watching, because the first week is going to be, it's directed from SCAD, and we're going to be talking about ways to try to help people. There's too many people that are passing on because of heroin, and we want to try to stop it and at least get information out there so that everybody knows what's going on. Also, the VFW in Pawcatuck is having a comedy night. I think it's next Friday. Pretty sure it's next Friday. Contact them, and it's going to be a good night. We're going to have refreshments and whatever. Thank you, Beth, for being on the show.
Thank you so
Really
much. I appreciate what you do.
Thank you. Thanks for watching. Email me at santostom@comcast.net. It's getting cold out there. You should be reading. Cuddle up with a good book on these cold nights. And I'll see you next time. Thank you.